All right, so just prior to this video, you should have seen a recap of the book Multipliers. And I give that to you just because I know you're not going to take the time to read it, or maybe you will. I've got it. Borrow my copy. Just give it back. It means a lot to me. But I know a lot of us don't have time for that, but it is so important for us and a big part of our culture that you get that book in your heart, in your head, and you know how to pour knowledge into people. You understand why it's important that we do that. You get how and why we're leading this leadership factory with compassion and always looking to see the best in people and to put them in their strength zone and to build up people. Part of that I did not touch on before is understanding where they want to go long term. It's a question I probably asked you if I interviewed you when we started. Where do you see yourself in a year, 3 years, 5 years? Is your long term goal to get a job and to grow with it, or do you have someplace else that you're going? For example, one of my very favorite leaders, Ryan Lawson Maskey, is an actor. And as much as I want Ryan around 24/7, I want to see him succeed at the thing he wants to succeed at more. Why? I care about him. But also, it's part of our philosophy of leadership. We want to see everybody else around us growing. That's it. And for those of you that want to stay in our universe, I want to grow our universe as big as we can and still have room for you. This is our leadership philosophy. Um, I never want any of you to run out of road with us because we couldn't create opportunity. It's possible it'll happen, but that's my goal, is that it won't happen, is that I can grow fast enough to stay ahead of you so that we can get you to a place where you can grow to the next thing, and where you're happy enough and where you've drank the Kool-Aid of what we're trying to do enough that you want to stick it out with us. Like, something that keeps me going every single day is the Nathans and the Jeremys and the people in our world who I see that are doing the work because they love the businesses, they love the customers, they love the people that they're working with. And it's those people that make it possible for me to live the life that I live, that it makes it possible for me to grow the company at all. And so I want to return the favor. And so that is part of our leadership philosophy. So if you are interviewing somebody and their goal is to go off and become an attorney, then by God, it is your job to help them learn something along the way that will be useful. If they want to be an attorney, then they need to know how to speak and interact with a variety of characters. They need to be able to think on their feet. And they also need to be able to be balanced and studied and get rest and all of these things. So we need to be considerate of those as they're working with us. So putting them on the floor to work with the number of characters that we have is going to be something where they leave our organization with that skill just a little bit stronger, but also recognizing that their schedule needs to accommodate their study is also important. Things like that matter. But when we get people in our company that clearly want a growth path with us, that you share with them the mission and vision of this company and they light up and they see themselves in it, we want to pour into those people. So along the way, there will be people that we can't pour into, that either they just can't, for whatever reason, rise to the occasion. They're a bad fit. And I'll tell you that is usually a really small percentage of people. I haven't had a lot of those. Or where their personal demons get in the way and they are sort of bringing their stuff into work and it's causing havoc for everybody else. That's much more common. Or there's also this sort of third category of person that just doesn't care to try harder. And usually we're pretty good at like sniffing that out in the interview process and cutting that out and not allowing that in. But that does sneak in from time to time. No matter what, for whatever reason, there are going to be people that are underperforming in your world. And we are a compassionate company and we want to give everybody the opportunity to succeed first. So you are empowered as a leader to take action. Our highest leaders, our assistant manager, our general manager, and anybody leading a shift is empowered to send employees home, to write them up, and to, if you're an assistant manager or a general manager, you are empowered to terminate for bad behavior. If you're below that level of assistant manager, you can write somebody up and you can send them home, but we need to defer to our assistant and general manager for termination. In fact, not only are you guys you are expected to do this. This is like a duty of your role. It should almost never come to me and Ike that there is an issue with somebody and we have to decide to take action. What I need from my leaders is swift and decisive action. And I need you to be looking around corners for what's coming. And this is going to be something that you will develop in time, but you'll start to recognize certain behaviors and certain patterns after dealing with people for a long time. And you'll start to see, hey, I see trouble brewing over here. I'm going to hop on it before it gets out of hand. And you'll also start to understand, is this something I can resolve, or is it something that's untenable and we need to just part ways with the employee? I need you to be spending time in thought as much as you are spending time in action so that you can quickly make moves and cut out cancers as they arise. Sometimes people just hit the wall and they burn out on our industry, and that's fine. We want to offer them a graceful exit if that's the case. So first, employees need to be coached and corrected. First, we just need to have a conversation. So if somebody is, just angry every day on the floor, just angry, and they just bring that in, it'll start to impact your entire team. And while your entire team may not be saying something to you, your team will start to leave the organization. They will just quietly say this is a toxic environment and leave. And that's the worst thing that could ever happen under your watch. We need to be aware of those people. So first we need to coach and correct. It's hard, but it's absolutely necessary because it supports the other employees and it protects the brand that employs all of us. So quickly handling that bad behavior is critical for protecting both the culture and the company. And like I said, as a company of compassionate leaders, we first seek to coach and correct whenever possible. Our goal is to build up the employees, to give them a chance to succeed, and to help them find long-term success. That is our first goal. As the supervisor, it's your role and responsibility to watch the employee performance and to hold them accountable to our standards and the expectations of their role. You are there to make sure that the whole team does well. And if one or two individuals are jeopardizing the team's success, you have to address it immediately. And I'm talking hours, not days, not weeks. I want you to get to a place where you feel comfortable and confident making swift cuts. And understanding, sometimes you're going to have to cut somebody and somebody else will leave in solidarity. But we don't allow cancers to remain on staff, unfortunately. And these people will be happier in another environment in the future. And that's all kind of part of what we're trying to do. We just want everybody to get to a place where they're happy. And sometimes it's leaving our industry. But you want to first encourage them towards positive behaviors and literally give them the feedback and coaching and correcting. You want to make notes that you've talked to them, give them written warnings when that doesn't work. You want to set very clear expectations and be direct and clear in your language. You want to keep up constant conversation with them because you are coaching them. You want to be clear about future actions when you talk with them. Leave any employee discipline conversation or correction conversation with an exact plan of action. Be clear about what you want from them. Let them know, I need you to leave this attitude at home. This is not acceptable attitude on the floor. And unfortunately, if you keep coming into our shift angry, then we're just going to have to start sending you home. And if I have to send you home repeatedly, we're going to have to part ways. Just make it very clear and set very clear expectations. Give verbal warnings, then lean on written warnings, but don't give a lot. They need to respect you and respect the company enough to understand that their behavior is jeopardizing everyone's well-being and the success of what we're trying to do, potentially the customer experience as well. When employees just not in the right mind or attitude, if they're anxious or overwhelmed, it's your role to diffuse the situation. I would recommend first offering somebody maybe a break outside to reset. But if they have not come back in an improved headspace, send them home for the shift. If they were simply anxious or emotional, let them know that you're sending them home so they can reset, and remind them when they return, we expect them to come back ready to work. We have to give compassion, but we have to also express that this is a business and that the team depends on them. If they are angry or taking out their feelings on other team members, send them home and let them know that a write-up will follow. Let them know that speaking disrespectfully to others is not tolerated and it's damaging to our culture. Typically, being sent home one time sends a strong enough message to correct behavior because many of our employees are money motivated and they do not want to like chance losing income. When an employee persists in poor behavior, we need a paper trail. Please leverage one of our write-up forms or send an email to HR about what happened. Fill it out in detail, send it to HR. Things that require an immediate write-up without verbal warnings are a no call, no show for any reason, a verbal altercation with staff or employees, or calling off without a doctor's note for 2 or more consecutive days. If somebody, especially management or somebody that's been there and has some potential with us, another tool that I like to implement is called a performance improvement plan. And honestly, people think when they're given this that we're trying to push them out the door. That is couldn't be farther from the truth. A performance improvement plan is just that, is a written plan that tells the employee in black and white, we're taking the emotion out of it. Here are the areas where the performance has fallen short. Here are the exact measurable and specific actions I expect you to take to change this. And here's the date by when it happens. The key to a performance improvement plan, and this is a tool that you have, and if you don't have a copy of the document, please talk to our operations and HR person and get yourself a copy of it immediately. This is a very important tool because once you give it to them, it's going to have a deadline. Typically, we will give between 2 and 6 weeks for a turnaround in behavior. If it's really egregious behavior, it's going to be a shorter turnaround because I'll have zero tolerance for that sort of stuff. But especially for managers, we try to give like a 6-week window if we can. This does 2 things. It takes the emotion out of it. It's in writing, right? And sometimes it will deflate somebody and they will just quit. And sometimes it will motivate them to get their head right and get back in the game. And that's really what we want to see. We never want to terminate somebody and they're surprised about it or they didn't see it coming. This puts the ball in their court. We're saying we'd love for you to continue on with us, but in order for that to happen, you need to take these actions. And they're either going to take those actions or they are not. And at that point, it's not you being mean or you having to make an emotional decision of any type. It is just very black and white. And it's like, okay, it was a pleasure to work with you most of the time. Thank you so much for your time that you gave to us. It was nice getting to know you, but unfortunately, we are going to have to part ways because this was really clear. These were our expectations. This is our deadline. And you really were not able to complete this. That was your choice. And I understand. And we're gonna have to part ways. That's it. Very black and white. It's a very, very powerful and useful tool. And I only give it to people that we really do want to stick around. Some people do need to be terminated. So let's talk a little bit about termination and best practices for termination. There are offenses, obviously, your policy handbook, hopefully by now, there are offenses that require immediate termination. Physical altercation of any kind. Let me tell you about the day we had to fire 2 managers for getting in a fist fight. Zero tolerance, as hard as that is. Theft of any kind. Showing up to work while intoxicated. Drinking or taking drugs on the clock. Verified sexual harassment. Violation of gun or weapons policies. So when you're letting an employee go, it's important to remain respectful at all times so that they leave with as positive a feeling as possible. Some people call me the termination whisperer. Sometimes the way I terminate people, we remain friends for like the rest of their lives. And that's a weird thing to say, but it's because I, honest to God, want them to know that because I handled it with respect and I tried to make sure that they understand the decision is final, all these things, but I don't know. It's a gift. So when you meet with them in person, it's ideal whenever possible for it to be in person for clarity of communication, but also so that you can get back codes, keys, credit cards, company items immediately. Because if you do it over the phone, you're 90% you're not going to get any of those things back. And then we incur the cost of all of that. So be sure that you give them the dignity of termination in private. The news of being fired may surprise or confuse the employee. Again, we hope not. Hopefully, we've been very clear in our communication. And so there may be the need for clarification. So carefully explaining the reason for their dismissal and remain honest. Ideally, a termination is never a surprise because we've got a paper trail and a verbal or written history of corrections and write-ups related to their behavior. But if this is the result of an ongoing issue, you can remind them of those things. You can remind them of the warnings and the guidelines that they failed to meet. To ensure that you're clearly explaining the situation, have your answer for why you're firing them ahead of time. And sometimes it can be as simple as, I'm sorry, this is no longer working out. We're going to have to part ways. If it is just a very delicate situation, check with HR on this before you do terminate. Check with them on your reasoning before you make it whenever possible. Sometimes we really have to leave it at that. I'm sorry, it's not working out. We're going to have to go our separate ways. We wish you luck. But make sure that you are confident in your wording, that the employee understands the decision is final. Giving the employee an impression that you might rehire them in the future is going to cause them to feel more emotional. They'll actually leave on worse terms with the company. The key to a clean termination is keeping it short. So I have a document that you should have received. If you have not, please see our HR person for best practices and policies for termination. But I scripted out a number of different scenarios. When you have to fire somebody for an attendance issue, for example, we made it clear to you what the consequences of breaking our policies are. You signed our employee handbook. Unfortunately, whatever, just that sort of thing. Because you're terminated, you're unable to cash in any of your paid time off. If they've got it, that's an important thing to include. Your final check will be deposited on schedule for the hours that you've worked through today. We wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. But we just, we have a policy in our handbook. Unfortunately, you violated that policy. We made it clear what the consequences were going to be. So unfortunately, we're going to have to part ways and we need you to leave. Just know that we're rooting for you. We wish this could have worked out. Unfortunately, it did not. We do wish you the best. Because you were terminated, you are unable to cash in on any of your paid time off. Your final check will be deposited on schedule. We wish you the best of luck. Something like that, right? Just sort of look through these different things that we've scripted and get a sense of what the wording is. We have a termination checklist in that guide as well. You have to let HR know immediately before you do it so that you can talk out the reasoning if possible. Also, so that they can begin hiring for that role immediately. You have to gather evidence and details, go through statements of past documentation of issues. Ideally, HR has all of that in their file. You have to pick the right time to do so, but don't wait because bad behavior should be dealt with swiftly. You should probably practice what you're going to say, rehearse what you're going to say ahead of time. Ideally, bring a witness, preferably another manager or HR. You need to be clear and firm and short. You need to show compassion and respect. Don't get emotional yourself. Get the keys, the cards, the company items, and just know at the end of the day, you may still remain friends with this person. We just can't have them in the company. You need to remove them from our tools and accounts, all the logins, make sure that happens immediately. And we have to announce their departure to the leadership team. We do not have to announce their departure to the rest of the team. So if the person was a good employee and let's say we had to, lay them off because there's lack of work or we have a crazy downturn or COVID happens again, you can soften the blow by offering them a letter of recommendation or an introduction to other business owners. I had to let go of somebody in last year who just wasn't a good fit, but they were a wonderful person. And I was able to connect them with references for new opportunities. And you can do the same thing if you wish. I'm fine with that. But again, don't worry about it right in that moment. Handle this with professionalism. Decide what you want to do later. So these are the things that in our absence, it's incredibly important that you do. Your job is building people up, exemplifying standards, looking for new leaders, always moving those things forward, but also quickly dealing with bad behavior, not letting it pile up, and letting people go compassionately. All right. As we move forward, we're going to talk a little bit about our community give back and our culture.